This is part 132. Memory transcription subject, Chief Hunter ISIF, Orcs Rebellion Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, February 2, 2137. The insurgency landed some major gains against Betterment, after successful plots with infiltrators on RIS. Improvised explosives targeted shipyards, government buildings, and military barracks, with human intelligence disseminating ways to homebrew such munitions. It took several detonations for Orcs officials to catch on to the package bomb tactics, which flattened a few offices. One took out a wing of prophet descendant Giznel's palace, though unfortunately, the government's head wasn't around. My job was selecting which ships to assign to liberate cattle from various sectors. Of course, the last thing I wanted was for the Orcs populace to starve. However, if Betterment failed to fill the citizenry's stomach anymore, and the rebellion was teeming with food, it pushed more recruits into our arms. Risking our lives to rescue prey was not something I would have dreamt up of my volition, but I was trying to entice the UN to see us as honorable allies. Blowing thousands of herbivores out of the sky to liberate them would earn a disapproving nod from Zhao's people, so we turned to piracy tactics instead. Successful missions led to my people returning cattle, with no demands made, to a Terran subsidiary. The rescued herbivores must have been confused to see Orcs in a gunfight amongst themselves, and then handing them off to a free society. We received a warm reception as we docked at the human worlds. I didn't know that the primates had the manpower to attend to rescues, but they would find some place for the livestock. After those positive deeds, we talked the Earthlings into providing air support, when we offered to raid a cattle world in the Mazak sector. Zhao is still leery of taking on the Dominion, especially since Gizsnel is targeting my faction rather than Earth. Supposedly, the Battle of Milo had mixed results, a stalemate in the kindest interpretation. I don't know how humanity can hope to take Alpha, let alone RIS. Our task was to survive and create chaos, for as long as was necessary. The downfall of the Dominion wasn't going to happen overnight. Still, it was rejuvenating not to have to perform cruel actions to retain my title, and to see other defectives living open lives. The clips the United Nations forwarded from the archives validated that empathetic dispositions were once common. Before Betterment began culling weak individuals, RIS touted a number of creative talents and ethical camps. Selecting for violence and aggression weeded out the vibrant emotions that we once possessed. While we were a solitary species, we aspired to higher ideals. RIS had been excited to learn from alien cultures, and the farcical narrators seemed confused about whether our peace offer was ever genuine. Immense sorrow crashed down on me, realizing what our race. Zhao vaguely mentioned an additional archives discovery pertaining to RIS past, but claimed that he hadn't decided what to do with it yet. I wasn't sure what to make of that statement. The Secretary-General promised to explain the missing tidbit down the line, so in the interest of placating humanity, I opted not to push for answers. If it was vital to the war efforts, the information would have been passed along with the initial package. Good morning. Lisa, ISIF, please provide your daily, "You were right about everything," Oleg, statement. The conspiracy theorist human bore a sickly sweet grin, and I wished I could smack the smug expression off his face with my tail. I guess the Federation abducting humans wasn't that crazy, now was it? Lisa huffed in irritation. It's been weeks since the archives raid. Are you going to bring this up every day? How many times do you need us to stroke your ego? You told me every day that I'm crazy, and detached from reality, so I expect an equal number of acknowledgments of how wrong you were. Even after I was spot on about the feds doing gene probing on their own lot, nobody thought, hey, maybe Oleg's onto something, they'd do it to us too. A broken clock is right twice a day. So you've been right twice, and you're still a broken clock. I'm still waiting for the death ray predictions to pan out. Well, that's different. Human institutions are better at covering up conspiracies, so you gotta look at the facts. Follow the money. You're insufferable, I jumped in. What do you get out of all this baseless speculation, leaf liquor? Felra twitched her whiskers. Oleg doesn't trust people. Can I tell Sci-Fi why? I guess, the human grumbled. His parents were pronounced as dead in a car crash, but he never got to see the bodies. They were reporters. He thinks the government, his or otherwise, made them disappear. I kinda thought they were abducted by aliens, but it doesn't seem the Fed visited Earth recently. So that leaves human players. You see, the elites just want to keep power, and they do that by ensuring that we mindlessly consume and follow their narratives. The game is rigged from the start, but they want us to keep playing. Lisa pursed her lips. Oleg, I don't know how to say this, but did you ever think their bodies weren't fit for burial? That, they didn't recover them intact? Your relatives might have kept that knowledge from you. The relatives who wouldn't take me in, and sent me to a group home? Ah, yes, those people definitely had my best interests at heart. Maybe the bodies were burned, Felra offered. I had a classmate who got killed in a predator attack, on school property. The exterminators torched the defiled body, and the entire building. The humans and I stared at the dossier with the same amount of bewilderment, processing her story. What predator managed to sneak into an urbanized children's facility? Why did the prey creatures insist on burning anything that so much as looked at a predator? It wasn't clear what happened to Oleg's parents, but I could guarantee that the leaf-licking primates wouldn't do something so moronic. Granted, corpses could be vectors for disease transmission, but this hardly sounded like an issue of public health. I thought empathetic creatures mourned their loved ones in ritualistic fashion. That dossier's parents would accept the exterminators burning the remains of their child? We don't do that. Lisa was blinking in rapid succession, as though something occurred to her. We perform autopsies on violent deaths. Why would the exterminators burn the bodies? Felra twitched her whiskers. The predator's saliva and DNA is on the body. You didn't answer her question, rodent, I growled. What if those chemicals got into the water supply, or were absorbed into the soil and then to plants? It could cause a dangerous strain of predator disease. It was clearly from a savage monster, after all. This is the most unscientific, sniveling nonsense I've heard from a leaf licker. So you're saying because I picked you up with my claws, you contracted predator disease and need to be burned? I am a contaminant to you? It's plenty verifiable. Being around predators made me want to try carcass food, so it does prove their point. It's worth it to me. Besides, you're a good predator. I told you I thought there were harmless predator disease strains, and you're harmless. I am not harmless. That is insulting to say, Felra. I am a fearsome hunter, murderers and marauders cower at my name. Lisa feigned a yawn. You're melty on the inside. And for the record, that's not an insult. It's a good thing to have a heart. Have you noticed humans don't like cruel monsters? My sister had me convinced you were people-eating menaces, until I met you. You showed us both that Orcs can be different, Felra said. I thought you were gonna eat me, but then I saw you really cared. More than anyone else I've known. I'm sure now more than ever that nobody deserves to be alone. Felra and you are just adorable together. Now, I've led some teams for the UN, some sensitive missions, but a rebellion like this, you have a cause, an important one. That means something. I like you because you stand for an ideal. My eyes narrowed to slits. That's easy for you to say. The Orcs following me would love to hear we're chasing some illusory concept, yes? And I'm sure they'd be thrilled that leaf lickers like their leader for being defective. I'm harmless, is that not so? It's okay to care and to have feelings. I know you're strong, but I don't think you'd hurt people for no reason, that's all, Felra chittered. Speaking of people you did hurt, where is Kaisal? Lisa tilted her head. Yeah. He should be here by now. He's usually punctual, so I wonder if something's wrong with him. Kaisal has been nothing but a negative presence on this bridge, so I've asked him to work alone. I flared my nostrils, simmering at the memories of the runt. As long he files his reports, I don't think it'll be necessary to break his tail again. You sent him away, scifi? I get that you did it for me, but I don't want that, the doseur squeaked. Kaisal isn't the last grey that hates prey that you'll have to handle. If I'm gonna stick around as your friend, you have to do better. I tried discipline. I tried feeding him well, and giving him power. What do you want me to do, pet him? Silly Arxer, I have to be the first sapient you pet. I'll be jealous if not. Now, we're gonna go find Kaisi, and we're gonna be nice to him. The two humans shared a glance, before gesturing for Felra and I to go on without them. Judging by that wordless exchange, it was possible they agreed with my exclusion of Kaisal from the group. The scrawny Arxer hadn't become the open-minded successor that I hoped for, nor had he been helpful as a second. The doseur truly was deranged, if she thought showing defectiveness to the condescending runt would change his stance. Why did my best friend care about the treatment of someone who viewed her as food? This is what happens when empathy runs haywire. It is weakness when it's not contained. I checked that the doseur was balanced enough for me to walk, and strolled out of the conference room. Kaisel's quarters were on the opposite side of our cordoned-off area from my lodgings, which was intended to keep him distanced from Felra during leisure time. Gasping noises reached my sensitive hearing long before we arrived at our destination. I narrowed my eyes with suspicion. Had the scrawny Arxer managed to re-injure himself through incompetence? I quickened my pace, flinging open the door with slight worry. It seemed wasteful if anything were to happen to Kaisal, after the effort I'd put into training him. Felra chittered as she noticed the Arxer sniffling, and cocooning himself in a blanket. He appeared to have been sleeping, though he jolted awake after our noisy entry. The runt struggled to collect himself, but mucus still dripped from his nostrils. Before I realized what happened, Felra leapt down onto the bed. "What's wrong, Kaisal?" I asked, scooping the doseur back onto my shoulder before she could get eaten. I have felt sadness and loss before, yes. My understanding will surpass the average Arxer's. You're just the latest person to bully or trick me into doing what you want. You're forcing me to tolerate that prey animal even now. Everyone laughs at my weakness. I didn't want to join the war. I tried to defect to Earth, twice, and they shipped me back to the Dominion. I'm used and discarded at every turn, and my life is nothing but suffering. How can you possibly be suffering? You are well fed, and elevated to a powerful role, are you not? Being able to feel something other than hunger, it's just as awful as starving. I think about things, I revisit things and it hurts. The doseur attempted to wriggle off my shoulder. It's called guilt, Kaisal. You can't see me as anything more than a thoughtless animal without feeling it. You blame me for what happened to the Arxer, when you know it was the Farsal and the Kolshians. We could be civil with each other. I hate you. You were involved. You helped them make us live like this. I lashed my tail. Don't roar at. Stop, scifi. I can speak for myself, Felra hissed. Have you not seen that betterment we're knowingly helping the Kolshians, a lot more than any of us? The reason you're starving, and you live like this, is your own government slaughtered your actual animals. They didn't care what happened. I hate them too. Why do you think I defected? But you just squeak and babble on about soft nonsense, every day. You know nothing, and you contribute nothing, you weaken us with your squeaking gibberish. The scrawny Arxer kept his head pointed away from us, and his sides heaved with uneven breaths. I was tempted to explode at him for those comments, but Felra shot me a scathing look as I opened my maw. With flaring nostrils, I let her leap off my shoulder. Kaisal hissed with disgust, as the rodent crawled up his arm. Her ginger fur looked bright, compared to the shadowy interior and his gray scales. If you don't want to be in a war, we need to make peace. We don't have to like each other, Felra said. It's time for prey to see predators as people, and predators to see prey as people, not food. Nobody should live like we do now, can't you agree to that? Kaisal fixed his eyes, which were narrowed to slits, on her. I hate this war as much as I hate you. Get away from me. So we agree on ending the war? That's a good start. Hey, I know you don't want to be alone. Sci-Fi and I are friends, so you don't have to hate me. I picked the doser up, returning her to my shoulder again. I am just trying to make things better, Kaisal, in the only way I know how. If you work with me, and make an effort with Felra, I can enable your success. I do not wish to discard you, but I must protect her. Come back to the briefing, if that is your desire. I'll be there in a few moments, the runt grumbled. I ambled out of his quarters, and moved my pupils toward Felra. The doser looked quite pleased with herself. She'd handled herself with more fortitude and discretion than I could have anticipated, given Kaisel's hostility. It was true that other Orcs would share those feelings toward prey, so it would behoove me to discover how to change their opinions now. If betterment was overthrown, I did wish for the needless war and carnage to cease. Too many sapients have died and lived wretched lives. With the hatred between our peoples, how could we ever achieve lasting peace? I do not think the Federation wants peace, Felra. Convincing the Orcs is easier, and as you can see, that's not easy in the slightest, I remarked. The doser tilted her head. I've told you multiple times to reach out to the Federation, and make amends for the awful things that have happened. You could get some herbivore allies. They do not want to talk to us, yes? I know that is your hope, but it is a fantasy. It is not within the realm of possibility. You don't know that. You haven't even tried. Trying worked for the humans. The humans haven't done what we've done, and their allies are lukewarm at best. 10% of the Federation was willing to consider not slaughtering them. You could reach out to that 10%. Send a message to their diplomatic summit. Maybe Zhao would help plead your case. The reason the humans won't associate with us is twofold. It's partly because it would kill their reputation with said allies. I wasn't invited, and I doubt they'd show me to the main location if I turned up at the handoff. I won't interfere with their get-together, so get that idea out of your head. Then figure out where they're having the meeting on your own. You could follow them and try to deliver a message, or at least ask Zhao instead of assuming he. It's not happening, rodent. The doser ducked her head, drooping her whiskers in a way that made me feel guilt. The simple fact was that there was no fixing the rift between the Orcs and the rest of the galaxy. The bad blood stemmed from generational trauma and heinous atrocities. No rebellion could depict us as anything other than monsters, except to the humans. Even the primates hadn't always been sympathetic, due to their open disgust toward our cattle practices. I could never tolerate the derision the humans had subjected themselves to, regardless. The goal of my rebellion was to undermine the Dominion, not to sing in the streets with leaf lickers. The best that the Orcs could hope for was the overthrow of betterment, and a brighter future centuries down the line. If Felra couldn't get that through her head, she was more delusional than Olek. This is part 133. Memory transcription subject, Governor Tarva of the Venlil Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, February 5, 2137. The election cycle had become more contentious, ever since the truth about the Venlil reached the public's ears. Velm lambasted my proposal for a union with humanity. My re-election platform involved an instinct suppression program that extended to civilians, a vow to hold a referendum on renaming our planet to Skalga officially, and a pledge to strengthen our military under Terran guidance. After what the Federation did, we had to ensure they never got their claws and tentacles on us again. Reversing the gene edits was my top priority. It was too late for the current generation. But Venlil born in the future weren't going to be hobbled and sense-deprived. Funding scientific research was an action I was already taking. The Federation physically weakening and mocking us, stealing our children, outraged the public. Velm was clever, suggesting that Venlil didn't want humans having the second crack at our genome. The first debate had happened just before I left for the summit, and he claimed that I was making us too dependent on predators we knew for a month. He had stumbled upon a campaign slogan, "No more federations," as I prepared to bring us into a new organization. The polling margins were a few percentage points, with the race neck and neck down the home stretch. Many Venlil wanted to stand on their own, and pursue an isolationist policy. I didn't know how to tap into that sentiment without violating my core principles. What could I do to give the appearance of keeping humanity at arm's length, without actually pushing them away? Right now, my focus was exploring the station we were docking on with my delegation. Selling a joint charter to an incensed citizenry could come later. The human envoy should have been the first ones there. I don't know how many others have turned up, but we need to lay on the charm and mingle with every species. It's our job to back up the Terrans, put down any bigotry. Am I understood? I asked. Cam flicked his ears in acknowledgement. Yes, ma'am. Not sure where the escort ship has led us, with them jamming our comms and navigations. Think that's the point, nobody knows where this is happening but them. It's secure as it can be. I'm here in case Ambassador Koji asks after me, aren't I? Glim grumbled. I can't believe the Durerton are actually coming. I chuckled with disdain. I don't think Zhao could believe it either. He practically spat that name when he read the guest list to me. There's quite a few surprises there. Crocodile separatists were invited. Burla is coming on behalf of vassalized Silas. The Thafki agreed to come too. How Terrans pulled that one off is beyond me, but the archives sure have galvanized everyone friendly. We're not going to get an opportunity where so many species are open to the suggestion again, Cheln, my diplomatic advisor, commented. I've typed up a draft for your speech, Tarva. You need to hammer home that Venlil are herbivores, and we're still modified beyond recognition. Tie credit back to the humans for the archive's findings. I'll keep that in mind. My focus is more on one-on-one interactions, and leisure activities. We have days together with galactic leaders, and that means pulling out all the bells and whistles to make the leery parties feel safe and contented. Let's waste no time. Soon as the docking clamps are in, split up and move around. A few other high-level diplomats from outside my cabinet were along for the ride too, with leading figures from the exchange program also on the guest list. Every species was allowed up to 20 visitors, though I imagine the host humans would have more than that. Between security concerns and the need for at-length discussions with all parties, there was no way they could manage with meager staffing. I eyed the colossal space station, as we ducked below a hangar's overhang. Flashing lights illuminated the docking port, though the process of interfacing with the landing pad was automated. A welcoming party of humans was present in the terminal, standing with personalized gift bags. They were wearing full helmets, complete with translucent flower and fauna decor. It looked like someone had ripped out the pages of a children's book. The bottom section of the mask seemed to retract as needed, perhaps by brain pattern recognition. The Terrans could unseal the mouth covering without even touching it, almost like a prosthetic. The one who greeted me unsealed her mask for a moment, revealing a warm smile. They've been advised that they can act normal around the Venlil. That makes me proud, to know they don't have to hide themselves with me. What's in here? I accepted the gift bag they offered, and pulled out a translucent bottle. Cam scanned it with a visual translator, revealing that it said Everclear grain alcohol. Thank you, but you do know your human drinks are watered down compared to ours, right? The Predator chuckled. One shot of this stuff can make a human sick, but we still brew it. It's jet fuel. 95% alcohol. Figured it'd be more up your alley. Glim eyed the bottle with interest. Finally, something that'll make the bad thoughts go away. Give. Not so fast, Cam interjected. I can't sit through days of this political snoozefest without being inebriated out of my mind. We're sharing. The human greeter wagged a finger disapprovingly. Now, you haven't been here 5 minutes. Don't you think it's a little early to get wasted? No, Glim answered. Governor Tarva, I guess you have to be the responsible one. Whatever you do, don't leave us to talk to the Duerden alone. You didn't hear me say that. Please, head inside and lend our people a hand. We can take the bottle and the luggage to your quarters. I passed the bag back to her. You got it. We'll go say hello to the guests. A team of Terrans swooped in to unload our belongings, and it occurred to me that parties less comfortable with the Earthlings wouldn't appreciate predators taking possession of their belongings. I swished my tail in gratitude, before following the numerous signs pointing the path to the gallery. The station was new construction, likely having the final coats of paint splashed on in advance of the summit. Hallways and rooms were built with vaulted ceilings to accommodate Mazics, while accessibility ramps and quadruped lifts were also present. There's no question this was created as a place to host all species. That lends to the assumption that this is in a system close to Sol. Hundreds of guests had amassed in the banquet hall, which had a number of tables positioned shy of a stage. Non-alcoholic refreshments and Terran snacks were present, and calming music played throughout the theater. My gaze scanned the social circles that had formed. Human diplomats were chatting it up with various leaders. The big names weren't wearing 360-degree helmets. I recognized Sarah's curly hair through her mask, before deciding to wander to her group. Cupo, the Mazic president, was listening to her intently, along with the Fissen ambassador and guests from the Gojid party. Body appreciates the accomplishments of the scientific community, and I accept that, the female astronaut was explaining, utilizing emphatic hand gestures. The history books will remember Noah's speech on Alpha, the feats of military grandeur, and the jaw-dropping revelations. The experiments we've done are the foundation for reversal of the cure, or for any of the innovations engineers created for the military. But science is not a spectacle. Intellectual pursuits should never be a spectacle. Halmina, the Fissan, pointed the horn between her eyes at Sarah. The important thing is whether those experiments form the basis for profit, or whether they give humanity a competitive edge. You humans hold your own economically, those contracts you almost got us to sign were sneakily exploitative. Is science able to generate enough revenue to be worth the cost? That's the wrong question. None of the technologies you see as profitable would exist without someone pushing the boundaries, or unlocking a new discovery. I always found a number of fields fascinating, from biology to neurochemistry to geological surveys. What motivated me to pursue 2 PhDs, and kept me going through the grueling astronaut training, was the better understanding of our universe. The gaps we've filled in our knowledge, in a few months, are remarkable. What is remarkable about it, human? Cupo asked. You didn't specify what you thought the right question was. I'm still at a loss for what drives your people, even after our work together. The right question is simple. Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? I fail to see why that is important, or what it would change in your daily living. Or how it adds anything of value, Halmina chimed in. It sounds like a religious concern, not one of science. A Gojid I didn't recognize spoke up, waving her claws idly. Can you say there's any purpose, after all the suffering we've seen? I'm little more than a de facto leader of our largest colony. I watched my culture disintegrate, my homeworld fall, and the refugees scatter like unwanted rubbish. Sarah shifted on her feet. It's a concrete question as much as a philosophical one. The origins of life, the nature of our reality, it mystifies us, it defies all comprehension. We thought finding other life forms would put our role in the universe in perspective. Well? I strolled up to the circle, tapping the human on the leg with my tail. Did it give you the answers you hoped for? No. To be honest, we hoped that aliens would be enlightened, and they would show us a better way of living. Instead, we found a galaxy just as cruel as what we knew. I understand how Gojid Minister Kiri can struggle to find meaning, but maybe it's up to us to make our own meaning. Free will means that this suffering doesn't have to be all there is. Science can lead us beyond our current problems, and I refuse to stop believing that. I've always admired your optimism. I remember how happy you and Noah were, peppering me with questions and brimming at the prospect of new friends. Yet, even if science reverses the gene mods, it can't bring back the stolen years and history. It can't reset everything to how it was before. That's a defeatist attitude. We can try, Tarva. Hey Sci, that's a cattle rescue I'm friends with. For the other guests, she used to be a historian. When she heard that everything she loved was ripped to shreds by the archives, you could see how much it hurt her. But, while she might not be willing to leave the safety of her room, she's brave enough to work on a new exhibit of the Venlil's past. We can move forward. We can get through this. President Cupo flared his beige trunk. I don't know how I ever doubted humanity's motives. I was certain they'd turn on us, but Kwa owes our continued freedom to them. You have my full faith, and my full support for this mystical union of yours. The Gojids would like to hear more about what membership entails, Kiri chimed in. The benefits and the costs. Protecting what's left, I think we share that goal with the Thafkis. Halmina tossed her head. We're curious about the economic benefits. If you can give us a leg up on those pesky Neviks, we're in, no questions asked. It'd be worth your while, cheaper wares, better quality, to cut them out of the equation entirely. They've been losing to us in every regard for the past century. I'm not an official diplomat, but this is about genuine harmony and fair treatment between species. I can't see us agreeing to exclude any allies. If anything is discussed economically, I imagine it'll be market regulations and labor laws, Sarah sighed. What a disappointment. We're a newer species, like you. We fought our way from the ground up, and we didn't do it through red tape. I interjected, thinking of how to placate the money-hungry species. If the Fis-San Compact is superior to the Neviks, it should be easy for you to negotiate deals with every power on your own. That's how the free market works, isn't it? Surely you have the confidence to outbid them. You don't want any ethical problems embroiling you in controversy along the way, or any confusion in currency exchanges. The regulations exist for your benefit. I suppose we'll consider the impact of these proposals. The Neviks are so far behind us that they're nigh irrelevant. Our superior prices speak for themselves. The Venlil Republic would love to hear your best offers for an exclusivity deal, if you join. Now, please excuse me. I ducked away from the circle, feeling confident that Sarah could steer the conversation away from greedy lines. The Maziks didn't seem to require convincing to join our union. The Fissans would sign on if they thought they could get the better of the humans economically, and the Gojids would be interested in any protection for their piecemeal colonies. I passed Zerulean Prime Minister Braylon, in one-on-one discussion with UN Secretary of Alien Affairs Aaron Kemper. From what I overheard, the Predator was detailing protections for medics under the Geneva Conventions. The quadruped seemed receptive to these clauses. The United Nations was adamant about having every member state ratify the Geneva Conventions, and a Universal Declaration of Sapient Rights, before permitting entry. Severe violations would be cause for immediate dismissal from the group. There was no sign of Ambassador Noah, which gave me a slight pang of disappointment. I shook my head, certain that he'd turn up later. The astronaut was likely hiding among one of the groups. Secretary General Zhao was with a massive group, telling an amusing story to his listeners. I realized this was the only time I'd seen him wear a visor. During our early briefings, he elected not to do so. I slipped into the crowd, and perked my ears to catch the end of his anecdote. Mind you, this was my first time visiting an alien planet. As I stated, we were briefed on avoiding sudden movements or emotional displays, to avoid panicking the Venlil. So Jones and I are trying to be businesslike and professional, but we have no idea how to feel inside. General Cam thinks it's a wonderful idea to take us all the way to the Governor Mansion's gates, and there isn't a soul in sight, Zhao growled. Yodel Ambassador Lalo leaned forward. Let me guess, they heard human military were visiting, and nobody dared to visit? That's the gist of it. Anyhow, Cam seems nervous, and remarks on what competent predators we are. I've got no clue how to respond to that, so I take a swig of my water. Jones decides she's gonna make a wisecrack with the aliens, says something like, "Oh, don't worry, the US only preys on oil fields." I can't help but laugh, and the water shoots up out my nose, sprays all over Cam. The Venlil just looks horrified. "I haven't heard this story," I commented. "I think I find it more amusing than he does." Anyways, I apologize to Cam, and Jones and I are trying to explain why that happens. She means to search up the scientific reason for drinks coming up your nose, and asks where her holopad is. You know where it was? In her hands. You could just see in Cam's eyes when he realized that humans are horribly designed, incompetent predators. "I thought you were apex predators," Governor Burla, the current Tillfish leader, offered in an uncertain voice. "Sure, that's true enough. We also trip over literally nothing, put our holopads in the fridge when grabbing food, and forget what we were saying in the middle of a sentence. I'm serious, do your species ever walk into rooms and you can't remember what you went there for?" The Thafki representative scrunched his blue-gray nose. "We zone out and forget things, of course, but why would it be tied to walking into rooms for humans?" Funny enough, I looked it up, and it might be one of our prey defects. Early humans lived in caves, so predators would typically lurk at the edge of those thresholds. One theory is that our brains tell us to focus up and search for dangers. I guess our predator wiring isn't that strong, is it? We had plenty of creatures that ate us in the wild. Hell, the reason we probably invented language was to raise alarm calls for specific predators. "You're sapient because you used to be prey," Duertan Ambassador Koji remarked, in a voice that was unusually quiet. Something found in the archives changed her hostility. She seems mellow rather than incendiary. I should look up the exact contents of the Duertan's files. I was so focused on our own, that I hardly cared about any other species' truths. Zhao nodded. "Precisely. Just look at us, and I don't mean our eyes. We were defenseless prey, and most of our instincts evolved from us trying to stop being eaten all the time. The more I learn about it, from scrambling to understand our place in the galaxy, the more I think our instincts have little bearing on how we actually live nowadays. Humans have some obsolete, faulty wiring. Terrans have so many shared traits with us." I straightened my tail with confidence. The Secretary General was taking the right approach to build common ground. They're nothing like predators are supposed to be. Sapients are supposed to be whatever they want to be. Predator or prey, that is a dichotomy for animals. In this union, we're all the same. It's almost time for my speech, and that's exactly what I'm going to argue. What's best for all of us is to protect each other, and to cultivate a new culture of acceptance and tolerance. I hope each of you will choose to join us. Once the majority of the guests had arrived, the humans would be able to present their opening speech. Between the two circles I'd visited, the predators' diplomatic appeals were going surprisingly well. None of the species appeared disconcerted, and the fear directed toward Terrans seemed to have eased. I risked a glance around the venue, and spotted Noah and Glim on the opposite side of the hall. The Sulians, the Ankari, the Varen, and a number of more recent neutrals were picking through the food offerings, alongside the Venlil human duo. Everyone there was in good spirits. As light-hearted as this summit had been so far, I couldn't shake my unease over how well it started off. Gatherings never went smoothly for humanity. Between the office speech at gunpoint, the ship sabotage, and the bombing of Earth's memorial on Venlil Prime. It was too early to relax my guard. My job was to ensure there were no incidents with any of the delegations. The reception to the Predator's initial address should be telling, giving us an estimate of how many species had genuine interest in signing an accord.